Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a minute since I made a video, but I am back. I want to start with sharing my personal testimony of how God healed me. And this is part 1 of knowing God as Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. And so I want to start with a scripture. So Exodus 15:26, the ESV translation says, "If you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God, and do that which is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians. For I am the Lord your healer. For I am the Lord your healer." And so when we look in a Strong Concordance, according to the Hebrew definition of healer, it says Rapha. And so that's where we get Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. And so I'll probably share more about that in my next video. But I just wanted to come on and share my testimony today about how the Lord healed me. And so I wrote a little bit about this in my book. But this is the first time I ever spoken about it out loud. And so when I was 18, just out of high school, I enrolled in Job Corps in Kentucky. I think it was Mammoth Cave, Kentucky is the city that I was in. And if you ever been to Job Corps, you know they do a whole full medical intake on you, like STD testing, physical exam, medical history, all of that. And so when I had just got to Job Corps, I found out that my boyfriend at the time was cheating on me, and he had given me chlamydia. And so I ended up getting treated at Job Corps. But then randomly I started bleeding for 2 months straight, and I didn't know where it was coming from. And so at the Job Corps facility, the medical team was limited because it wasn't a lot there. So Job Corps flew me back home to St. Louis, and I had to find an OBGYN. And so when I went to go see the OBGYN, they ended up telling me I have PCOS and that the chlamydia had caused scar tissue and damage to my fallopian tubes. At that time, he didn't know if it was both or just one. He just said he seen damage to my fallopian tubes. He also told me I might not ever be able to have kids. And he scheduled me the procedure to help the bleeding stop. And so I did the procedure to have the bleeding to stop, and it did stop. This was my first time, I think, ever being to the OBGYN. I don't remember who was with me because, like I said, this whole testimony, it was a place of trauma for me, and so I suppressed a lot of it. But then also with me being so young, 18, hearing all this, I don't know half of what he was saying at that time. I didn't understand it. But then also I'm like, I'm 18, I'm out here living my life, thought I was grown, so I'm just like, ain't nobody worried about having no kids right now. So I really just suppressed it, pushed it to the side, and left it there. Like, I don't even think I remember talking about it with nobody. I just left it there. So fast forward 3 to 4 years later, I'm married at this time. We're talking about having kids. I told my husband what the doctors had told me when I was 18, and we went straight to a fertility specialist. And so the doctor ran some tests on me, and he told me, "Oh, you're not ovulating on your own." So he put me on Clomid, and Clomid is supposed to be a treatment to help you ovulate. And so I did that for like 3 to 4 months, but it didn't work. So my next option he gave me was to schedule a surgery to remove the cyst that came from PCOS and stuff, and then to try to clear my right fallopian tube was the one that was blocked due to scar tissue. And so I went ahead with the surgery. He was able to remove the cyst, but the scar tissue came right back after I healed. So my right fallopian tube was still blocked with the scar tissue. The next thing the fertility specialist told us was we have 2 options. He said one was to remove my fallopian tubes or to do IVF. And I'll never forget after he told me that, he said, but if you remove your fallopian tubes, that's like taking God out of the equation. And even though like I wasn't in relationship with God at that time, I just knew that was not the right answer. And so I was like, I'm not going to take my fallopian tubes out. I'll go ahead with trying IVF. And so, of course, later, now that I have a relationship with God, I'm like, okay, that was God speaking through that doctor. But me and my husband at that time, we moved forward with the IVF and found out that IVF was like $10,000. So I'm like, I only got some of the money to pay for IVF. And he gave me an option. He said, well, there's a couple that is also struggling to have a child, and since you're young, we could use your eggs for her to help her conceive and have this child. And he explained the whole thing with me. And so at that time, I don't think I told nobody else. I'm just out here young, just doing whatever. But at that time, my mindset was, if I'm going out through all this to have a baby, I can only imagine what another woman is going through to have a baby. So let me help her. And so that was my mindset. And so I agreed to donate my eggs to the other couple so that they would be able to conceive as well. After that, let's go back to me doing my transfer. During my transfer, and so IVF transfer is where they take my eggs, my husband's sperm, and in a lab they put it together and it creates an embryo. Then they take the embryo and they put it inside of the uterus. And so during my IVF transfer, everything looked good. I had an ultrasound and everything was fine. A few weeks later, I had to go in to get my HCG levels checked, and the nurse told me she would call me with the results. And at this time, they also had put me on pro-estrogen shots, and so I had to give myself a shot every day. And they said this would help with carrying the baby. And so I think it was about 3 days later, I woke up and I randomly heard, at that time it was random because like I said, I wasn't in a relationship with God for real. And I heard, it ain't over till God says it's over. And so that same day, the nurse called and she said, your HCG levels are dropping. And she said, so that means you're going to miscarry. Just let it happen naturally. And then once it happens, come back and we'll schedule another appointment or whatever. And so I remember being in my mother's kitchen and getting the phone call. I ran outside. I'm like, ain't no way this lady just told me let it happen naturally like this and that. And it was so much going through my mind, but it's like I couldn't cry. I just felt numb. So at that time, I remember telling maybe only like my parents and my sister what had happened. And then I told my doctor, I was like, I need a break. And so right after this, my marriage had started falling apart, and I was dealing with infidelity. Like, it was crazy, so much stuff going on. And at this time, since I had miscarried the baby, so many people were speaking on my womb, saying I couldn't have kids. It was too much going on at that time. Even some of my family members, like my ex-husband, the women he was cheating with, like, it was a lot to be experiencing at a young age, or just the experience naturally. Like, it's a lot. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'm done with trying right now. It's not the time, and it's too much going on. And I remember talking to my mama about it, and she said, in the Bible, the Lord shuts up wombs, but he also opened them too. And that stuck with me. And she said, it just might not be the time right now. Just pray about it. So I think I stayed married for like 2 more years. And I was seeking the Lord about my marriage. And I got to a point in my marriage, I was saying, Lord, whatever it is for your will to happen in this marriage, just let me know and I'll do it. And that's when I heard the Lord say to me, if you want faithful, you have to let go of unfaithful. So that next day, I filed for divorce, and I did not go back to him. I actually started focusing on my relationship with God. And so at that time, I had been filled with the evidence of speaking in tongues and the Holy Spirit, but I had never been baptized. So I actually ended up going to go get baptized, and that whole encounter and me growing my relationship, just knowing that the Lord heard me in my pain, in my wrongdoing, and not really trying to build a relationship with God. I was only building a relationship because I wanted him to fix my marriage. The fact that the Lord heard me in my pain and he answered me, he cared about me, and he loved on me that whole time, I knew I had to change my life around. And that was the very thing that brought me into relationship with God. And it really changed my life. Like, that was literally the starting point of me going deeper in God and learning more about God. And so back to the testimony about the Lord healing me. Trying to see where I left off at. Okay, so one night I was on a prayer call with the ministry, and a woman said, the Lord wants me to pray for fallopian tubes blocked by scar tissue. And as she prayed, I felt fire in my body, like it was a warmth that just came over my body. And at the end, she said, anybody want to tell what they experienced? And so I said, I felt warmth when you prayed, and I've been dealing with this. And so she said, well, go back to the doctor, and when you go to the doctor, come back and share what the doctor says. And so when I went back to the doctor, he actually took a picture for me to show me that both of my fallopian tubes were open and that I was ovulating on my own. And so that is literally how the Lord healed me, and he opened my fallopian tubes. And really, during this whole process, I'm like, I don't think I prayed as much as I should have prayed about being healed, the fallopian tubes and all that, because like I said, this was a place of trauma. It was a lot going on. I didn't know how to process it, so I buried it. But God is the God that heals. So no matter what I didn't do, God still healed me. And the whole time he walked me back through it to show me I was there. I was there through the divorce. I was there through the whole process of the miscarriage. And he said it wasn't over. I think another thing is now I'm a lot more mature, but also still maturing in my faith with Christ. But I feel like if I would have had a child back then and not saying that the miscarriage or anything was supposed to happen, no, none of that. But at the same time, I do feel like I've learned so much about preparing to have a child and understanding generational curses and bloodline and knowing what's in my bloodline, so I actually can be prepared to cover the children that will come forth out of my womb and things like that, whereas I didn't know that back then. And so I feel like during this time that God has literally allowed me to mature, know who I am in him, so that my children will know who they are in him as well. And as far as like me coming on here to really tell this testimony, I struggled so much because in my mind I'm like, Lord, I thought the testimony should be me holding a rainbow baby in my arms, like the child in my arms. But God said, no, this is my testimony. And the testimony is that I am Jehovah Rapha, the Lord that healed, and I healed you. And somebody out there needs to know me as Jehovah Rapha, the Lord that heals. So I pray that this testimony blessed you. It'll help you grow deeper and come to know God as Jehovah Rapha, whether you're experiencing physical issues or emotional issues, mental issues, that you would just go before God and get in his word and know him as the healer. I also want to let you guys know I'll be back on to walk through some scriptures and share more about like emotional healing and things like that. I'll probably also pray. But yeah, I hope the testimony encouraged you as you walk with the Lord.